marriage wins her parents the full financial reprieve of giving her to her husband's family, or in some cases that are very sad, to a sex trafficker who's posing as a groom. The law stipulates that girls may not marry until they are 18 years old, yet we find that about 60% of girls are still married before the age of 18. In Bangladesh, World Vision works with some of the country's most impoverished communities. Our work with children, families, the government, and faith leaders is amplified by national level advocacy work to stop violence against children. We have a couple of grassroots projects I'd like to highlight. The first is our privately funded multi-million-dollar child protection project in Khulna region. And right now, that project has supported the withdrawal of nearly 300 children from child labor. We prepare them to start or re-enter formal education, and we improve their families' income generation opportunities. And at the same time, we work very closely with the very complex Bangladesh government mechanisms to monitor and respond to child labor. One family that we worked closely with is the Matubar family, and I met them about 2 years ago. Very sadly, the father had abandoned the family, and Babu, who is now 13, and Sabir, who is now 9, were at that point among a tribe of young boys who ferried crates at a local river port. Their sister Sumaya, who's now 11, worked as a trash picker, while their mother, whose name is Bilkis, sold boiled eggs. Today, all 3 of the children are in school with the help of World Vision, and Bilkis has started a neighborhood grocery store, and her income now covers all of her family's expenses. Child marriage is an even more sensitive cultural and religious issue, and it too requires a robust response. One project that we have that's been working very intensely on this issue is a World Food Program and USAID Food for Peace project called Nobo Jatra, or New Beginning. Nobo Jatra implements its child marriage work through a male engagement module where fathers are encouraged to support their daughter's education and wait until the girls are at least 18 years old to consider a consensual marriage. Child protection committees hold fathers accountable and stand ready to help at-risk girls. The combined efforts have resulted in the prevention of about 162 cases of child marriage. We've seen great progress in Bangladesh over the last 30 years of work with World Vision. There's still some good work to be done, and we believe that the U.S. plays a crucial role in leading this work. House Resolution 910 and Senate Resolution 606 condemn violence against children globally and encourage the development of a comprehensive strategy. The U.S. should continue efforts to provide leadership and coordination on ending violence against children. Across development and humanitarian contexts in Bangladesh, child protection interventions have proven key to reducing violence and promoting resiliency. Unfortunately, child protection in emergencies is often globally deprioritized or underfunded. So we ask the U.S. government to pursue the following policy recommendations. First, we encourage the Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance to play an increasing leadership role by categorizing child protection as a life-saving intervention. This would enable funds for child protection to be released more quickly by the U.S. and mitigate the dire consequences of sexual and physical violence against children in humanitarian settings. Second, we ask that you robustly support the Department of Labor's Bureau of International Labor Affairs, also known as ILAB. Since its inception, ILAB has contributed to the global effort that cut child labor in half, and it continues to be a key partner in ending violence against children, both through its programming and through its research. So thank you all again for the opportunity to speak, and we look forward to working with members of the Commission to continue addressing the critical child protection issues.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you to all of our speakers for shedding light on the current context in Bangladesh, and in particular, providing a bit more information about both the areas that things are going well, but then also in spaces where there is room for improvement. I'd like to begin with one question for the panel. As it relates to, as Waris called it, structural and institutional changes that are required, can you shed some light on the tools that the U.S. government, particularly the Congress, since that's where we are, has at its disposal to help the Bangladeshi government move in the right direction with these particular structural changes? I'm going to throw in there also, in particular, independent institutions, including the judiciary.
Sure. So,
Boris, go ahead, and then
Okay.
John.
and then I'm actually going to borrow John's answer. So, GLOMAG, the Global Magnitsky Act, is a very important one because one of the things that we require, right, for institutional change, oftentimes, is for people who have power to relinquish some of that power. And oftentimes they don't feel like doing that, right? And so threats of sanctions and threats with the GLOMAG, which is what we call it, the Global Magnitsky Act, for failure to start making those institutional changes might actually encourage some of that. Secondly, and perhaps for me as a lawyer, most importantly, the judiciary is a very important sort of stopgap here. In the Shahidul Alam case, the photographer we were talking about earlier, it's the court that granted him bail, right? Of course, he hasn't been released yet, but it's the court. So I think that making sure that the judiciary is independent, and the appointment process for judges is transparent and isn't sort of manipulated is important, and then letting and following the orders from the court and implementing them in good faith can get you a long way. And that goes for across South Asia. I mean, I could point to judiciaries being the one institutional sort of, I guess, checking force that there is that's been actually implementing actual change at a deep level in Pakistan, in India, and other places. So I think Bangladesh is the same. It's got a history of a relatively, it has a mixed past with its judiciary, but has had very great judges. And I think that's something that should be encouraged and something that needs to be relied upon more.
John, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, one thing on global Magnitsky that needs to be made clear, there's various ways it can be triggered, one of which is for Congress to nominate particular people, particular government officials who are implicated in gross human rights abuses. But the other way would be to write into, say, appropriations legislation or some other vehicle of legislation, a requirement that the State Department report back to relevant congressional committees on who, in their to the best of their information, is implicated in gross human rights abuses. And you can name particular cases of disappearances. I'll give you an example. The two sons of the Jamaat Islami leaders, Mir Ahmad bin Qasim and Abdullah Aman al-Azmi, are disappeared. If the State Department knows who's responsible for those disappearances, and for the disappearances of the 19 other BNP supporters who we documented, and they tell Congress who those people are, and then Congress legislates that those people who are implicated be sanctioned, then that's the other way global Magnitsky can be triggered. But look, it's not all about punishment. I think it's also about support. Bangladesh needs support. And I want to emphasize, although I've talked a lot about civil and political rights, there's all kinds of technical issues that Human Rights Watch has documented in Bangladesh that have no political controversy to them. We've written reports on child marriage, for example, women's rights generally, the problems women have in Bangladesh with registering property, the ways in which men can so easily divorce them and strip them of all of their property rights, and things like that. Labor rights in the context of the worker safety issues and the Rana Plaza collapse, but other issues as well, like in the environmental realm, tanneries in Dhaka and their horrible toll of pollution that they impose, and land rights issues in the context of rising sea levels. These are issues where the United States can lend a helping hand and provide assistance to the judiciary to do simple technical things like learn how to create a registration system so that every marriage is registered. That would go a long way towards lessening child marriage. It would also help women who are perhaps being, men would attempt a divorce to prove that they were married and that they have a right to marital property. So little technical things like that, the U.S. can help provide assistance with, along with other allies. But ultimately, structural change requires incentives and disincentives. Global Magnitsky is a disincentive, but there are others. It's no secret that Bangladesh has a huge role to play in UN peacekeeping. And if military-to-military assistance to Bangladesh by both the United States and its ally, the United Kingdom, and other members, is restricted in some respects, and some of the training that Bangladesh receives from the United States and its allies on peacekeeping duties is curtailed in any way or restricted to some units over others, that's another way of getting the government's attention and saying, look, we are not happy with how things are going in Bangladesh. Every country is flawed. The United States is flawed. Believe me, we report on the United States government all the time and its terrible record on immigration and all kinds of other issues in Afghanistan and Iraq. So it's not about lecturing and looking down. It's just about saying we're concerned about our ally having human rights problems and we want change. And if you don't do what we're asking you as an ally to do, we're going to have no choice but to impose restrictions on our relationship, because we're not going to just give you assistance and give your military assistance and train you to be peacekeepers and do all these other things if you're going to turn around and commit human rights abuses against the political opposition.
Thank you, John.